For about the last 10 years, we were doing something called Missional Training Network. And the gist of that was to help churches to multiply and become missional. And we were also training young leaders. Well, out of that has come my relationship with Alan Hirsch. And of course with his organization in Australia called Forge, and with Missional Training Network in Canada. Out of our relationship, our friendship over the last 3 years, came to a point of about 15 months ago, summer of 2008, where we got together and we said, look, there's no point of us both doing these things. God's brought us together, let's do one thing. And so it made far more sense for us to go under the name of Forge than it did under Missional Training Network. So that's where we began in terms of Forge Canada.
I've been going around to various parts of Canada. I think it was in Winnipeg before, just with the Pentecostals, and then also just with the Mennonites, talking about ways in which we can stimulate kind of some sort of rethinking about the church and do what Forge does, is an attempt to try and kind of lead the church from the bottom up and to stimulate ideas and thinking about missional forms of church.
It's to help them to come to grips with the fact that we live in a time of discontinuous change rather than continuous change. We can't just keep shuffling the chairs around on the deck of the Titanic, we're still sinking.
We take context very seriously, culture very seriously, in subcultures very seriously, in cities. Variations with even in a given network. We identify our tribes, we identify with them, work with them.
Our desire is to take them from being provoked and feeling a little bit uneasy to a time of hope where there's a sense of, well, we can envision what the future can look like. We don't know how to get there, we don't know where it's going to end up, we don't know any of that stuff, but there's a sense of hope because there's some missional principles that God gives us in His Word that help us to envision a future.
I think Canada's more a genuinely unchurched culture now, and has to deal with missional church with a little bit more urgency.
How do we help churches become missional and multiply? How do we help young leaders be equipped to lead missional churches rather than maintenance type churches? How do we help denominations to re-strategize? What does it look like to become missional, plant more churches? And then finally, how do we help normal people learn what it means to not just be consumer mentality that we've so easily adopted, but rather instead to really become missionaries?
We believe that ministry of the church is at least fivefold in form, and that Ephesians 4 plays such a critical role in defining that. Slap bang in the middle of Paul's ecclesiology, it is a defining text in my opinion, and I think we've missed it. I think in recovering this, we've got to get it back to the people, and then from there the leadership formation takes place as part of discipleship. And in places that we're standing at a seminary, I think one of the great challenges for seminaries is to move beyond pastor-teacher modes with the interests that a pastor-teacher has.
Seminaries have to have the attitude of saying, look, it's not that we're going to suck people out of churches to be trained, but we're going to come alongside churches. We're going to come alongside the movements, what's happening, and we're going to equip them. The
apostolic is extension of the church, and the comprehensive whole, systemic. Integrity is very important, but advance as well. The prophetic would be focused around attentiveness to God and faithfulness to Him, and that keeping us online. The evangelist as the recruiter to the cause, and the infectious person, the enthusiast. The shepherd or the pastor as an integrator into community, love, discipleship, and teacher as in wisdom and understanding, as a person who helps us understand the mind of God and what is given to us to understand. Seminaries could take a cue from this and broaden out and develop curriculum along these lines. That would be not such a bad start.
The biggest shift for a school like, well, any seminary with something like Forge is to see them not as the enemy or the threat, but as something which stimulates us, pushes us, challenges us, and we do the same for them.
Don Gertz has said to me before in the past, if this is just about how do we accredit students, not interested. If this is about how can the seminary participate with different movements in Canada so that we see mission happen, all in favor of it.
What Forge is doing and the people who are connected to Forge just keep us close to that front line in terms of where the most creative engagement of culture and the kingdom is going on. And we need that to move our own thinking forward.